Whispering Woods is eager to put the finishing touches on the South America Dome. Life, however, has other plans. Genevieve Joyce finds out that Silvacorp is further expanding into South America and Africa following threats to end building contracts and sell stocks in the company. It seems that Sylvester Kane is calling their bluff. Omari Achebe, the Haven's wildlife contact in Namibia, finds himself in need of support once more. A pride of injured lions is on its way to the zoo, and Arthur Joyce is eager to take up the new project. While Imogen Chen prepares the veterinary clinic, and Wesley Parsons ensures all the animals have what they need, Liam Elliott steps up to the plate. In the span of a day, half of Silvacorp's building contracts disappear, and their stock value plummets. It wasn't a bluff after all. The real surprise comes, however, when Xander Joyce appears on the zoo's doorstep. Not only has he left Silvacorp behind, but he's brought 2 lions Sylvester Kane had poached in Africa as exotic pets with him. Welcome back to Whispering Woods Wildlife Haven. Hey everyone, Sparrow here. Thank you for joining me, whether it's for the first time or for the 100th time. We're taking a quick look at the South America Dome, which is over here. It is still under construction. And today we're taking a detour to fill in this gap between the South America Dome and the coyotes next to the desert house. The West African lion is considered critically endangered. It can be found all over Africa, but there are only about 400 left in the wild. Lions in general have disappeared from 90% of their historic range, which is really, really sad. They typically live in groups called prides with 1 male and a whole bunch of females, but they can also live in bachelor groups. Just figuring out what the sizing of each habitat will need to be in order to house 2 male lions, and then in a separate enclosure have 1 male lion with 3 or 4 females. So Sparrow, why are we building for lions? We were supposed to tour the South America Dome. Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. We are partnering with edZOOcation for August, and their animal of the month is Leo the lion. In every box you get an educational book, an activity magazine, ecosystem poster, paper dissection kit, high quality plush, and crafts patches and more. It is a fully hands-on learning experience, and in my opinion, that is the best way to learn. There are 3 sizes of box for different ages, so you can choose your own adventure. I'm so excited to be getting the ages 9 to 12 one. And best part is, it's founded by a real life zoologist mom, so you know it's packed full of fun facts about these animals. And every box donates to wildlife conservation, including some of these amazing conservation partners. It's super easy to get started. Simply click on the box on the homepage, select your size and the frequency of delivery, and choose your add-ons. My personal favorite, this Phalo conservation bracelet, and then hit checkout to help support wildlife conservation. So far, edZOOcation has donated over $44,000, and that is absolutely amazing. The only thing I will add is that the box is currently unavailable to be shipped to Canada, but for all of my US friends, make sure you hit link in the description to get $10 off your box. But never fear, if you are elsewhere in the world, we will be doing an unboxing here on the channel once mine comes in. So what exactly are we doing here? Well, we are building a moat for the lions because lions famously do not like water. And even though they might take a dip in Planet Zoo, that is actually not what they would do in real life. So we are putting these plaster panels all around the path to make sure that the lions can escape. We are trying to keep the moat about 25 feet across and about 15 feet deep. That is the recommended depth and length to keep the lions in the enclosure. So this is a very quick overview of what the area looks like right now. We may need to expand it a little bit, but we have the general area that the enclosures take up. On the ends of the moat, we're just going to put up some concrete walls in order to keep the water in. The backstage area will also feature some water filtration systems and a transformer to make sure that everything is working properly. Now that we have the man-made side set up, we also need to smooth out the terrain, and that is going to be thanks to the terrain tools, of course. set to about 20 to 30%, and we are just pushing and pulling things and then smoothing them out as we go to make sure that the coastline makes sense and isn't too steep. Now we are going to make a backstage building for the lions. This is going to be quite a big facility because we do have 2 enclosures and we want to make sure that the lions have a separation zone. There we go. That's the water in. It is such a good level. I am honestly surprised that it came in as well as it did, but that is what it looks like. And then of course I am going to hate myself even more with the backstage building and put this on a 45-degree angle and just make sure that we are sliding things in. If you ever wonder why there are so many groups in my builds, this is why. Next up, we are creating a new rock wall for the separation between the pride and the 2 sibling lions. Mostly faux rocks, which I recolored to the desert rock. We're gonna put those all together. I think there's about 6 faux rocks across, and then plenty of desert rocks sunk in. We also used the stalactites and stalagmite pieces in order to give it a little bit of texture and ground it into the soil. Honestly, this took much longer than what you're seeing in this video, but the thing is that you definitely need to spend a lot more time on these sorts of pieces because these are the things that you can use over and over again. Like, I kind of wish that I had done this for the desert house because we probably could have just stolen the walls for the desert house for this enclosure. But because I didn't do that, we had to actually spend the time to do it now. If you're starting a new zoo, don't be afraid to do all of these things. And then even if you need to fiddle with it along the seams and you need to add a few different rocks or edges along the way just to make it seem a little bit different, it will be a whole lot easier, believe me. So that is what our rock wall is looking like now. And we will move on to the backstage. Of course, we are putting down a floor first, just checkerboarding those concrete pieces to make sure the pattern is not super repetitive. And then we will build our first backstage area full of marquee beams and mesh pieces and metal beams and European cast iron. What else did I use in this? Just the regular metal beams from the Australia pack, the Fiesta metal pieces for some of the doorway, lots and lots of stuff. Right now we have the glass souvenir shop door in there, and that is mostly to provide a measurement for creating a custom door. But the mesh does also need to be doubled up in order to keep the lions in because they are quite large animals, and because of their claws, they need a fine mesh in order to keep them from tearing through it, essentially. These European cast iron beams are amazing for lining the mesh with. I don't usually do quite as much detailing in my builds, but I don't know. The lions are just such a majestic species. They deserve the best. Also, I realized that I was building everything with my camera facing towards the rest of the zoo, and everything was taking forever to load. And then I realized I could just build it from the other side, and then it wouldn't be quite as laggy. So this zoo is definitely coming to an end. However, there are still a few episodes that I want to bring to you, especially the South America Dome tour and a few other things. Now next we have the sliding doors that will allow the lions to enter and exit areas. Here's our lioness entering our backstage. And of course we also need a pulley system to make this work. Lots of wheels and cables and hinge pieces all around the place to ensure that this works. We do end up using only 2 wheels there to keep the door up, but we are going to use this wheelbarrow handle, which is such a good piece that a lot of people completely miss, in order to keep the door there. We're going to number them because the keepers will need to know exactly which handle they are using. So we have 1 through 6 to keep our animals contained. And then we will number the winches as well. Our in-between doors are lettered A and B, as well as the mechanisms that make them work. That completes our backstage. Onto the exterior of the building, using a few African decorative pieces just to bring this build to life. We're trying to keep it a little bit modern, but also a little bit themed. Like, we've been working in the South American Dome for quite a while. A lot of this stuff has been quite themed, and I'm not ready to let go of that yet. So we are going to theme this in an African style, using the African hut base and the decorative strips along the sides. And then we will recolor the whole building, the concrete, I mean, to reflect this sandy texture of the rocks. On the side housing the two brothers, we will move those decorative strips and change them just a little bit to provide a new backdrop. And then, of course, using the grid pieces to help us align the top of the building. That is the African thatch piece, and then also some more African decorative strips to line the top of the building. The thatch will not go all the way around the building. I had to remember that this part was on a slightly different angle in a different group because it was not working the way I wanted it to, but that will all get lined with the thatch and African decorative strips. And then the entire building will also get lined along the edge with the African decorative strips. This is such a good wood texture. I honestly wish that we had more sizes of this because it would be so beautiful to use. Once I'm done lining the sides, we're also gonna line the top. This was a little bit of chaos on my part. Like, this was not necessary at all, but I just thought it would look a lot better. And then along that edge, we're going to add a plaster rim, and that will kind of make up our flat roof of the Lion Backstage. It's always nice to add more levels like this. It makes it look a little bit more realistic and more interesting. So there we go. That is our Lion Backstage. Next, we are on to the barriers, the guest barriers specifically, because we will have other barriers going on afterwards. And they're mostly made up of the African beams, just making them more interesting with the diagonal pieces here. I decided to add an extra middle post because it looked like people could probably slip in through there, especially children, and we do not want that whatsoever. So here is our finished fence, and then no big deal. We just need to line the entirety of this enclosure with that fence, which spans about 2 meters. Here we are, making sure that the lions can't get out of their enclosure using the guest fence. And then we are going to move on to this railing along the water's edge as a double security measure to make sure that the lions, again, can't escape their enclosure. And once more, here is an anti-climb barrier on the rock faces to make sure that the lions cannot escape their enclosure, because that would be very tragic for the zoo, and we definitely don't want that. Now that the lions are secured, we're going to add plenty of enrichment for them to get them in the spots we want them, specifically like this lioness on the rock. What a beauty. And then I'm going to check all of my sightlines to make sure that the trees I put into this enclosure look really good. Because if these lions are coming from Namibia, they are actually a specific subset of African lions who prefer arid environments. And so they're not very used to a lot of trees. They're used to a lot of shrubs, lots of grasses, but not a lot of taller plants. So this side of the lion enclosures will be very minimal in terms of vegetation, maybe a few trees, maybe a few shrubs, but for the most part it will be a lot of low growing brush and lots of dried and parched grass, which we'll get to in a second here. Just figuring out this top planter between the two enclosures, lots of Natrarius retusa bushes, which are technically not part of the African grassland palette, but we're going to use them anyway. Putting some common reeds on the shoreline. This enclosure will feature a lot of blackthorn bushes, lots of hawthorn bushes, and so on. Here is the parched buffalo grass. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I did end up downloading the mod that allows this grass to be part of any biome, which is absolutely amazing, especially in this case. And then we will terrain paint everything with the grass texture, keeping some dirt lines in between these patches, and then also putting some rock along the shoreline and also incorporating some sand along those pathways because it just makes it look a little bit better. Finally, adding some more bushes. This is where I realized that we really don't have that many plants to turn into shrubs. So I ended up sinking the marula tree into the ground, and that helped a whole lot. I had done this in the camel enclosure, but it actually worked super well here. I think that's one of my favorite parts of this enclosure. And somewhere along the way, I also remembered that, hey, there's a lion remaster, and it makes the lions look a lot better. So here's a quick shot of this enclosure before we move on to the next. These are the two brother lions, and we're turning this enclosure into a little bit more of a lush landscape with the non-dried or parched buffalo grass. We have some fig trees as shrubs in here for a little bit more greenery, but we'll keep our marula shrubs as well because they just look so good. Some final touches in the form of some dead branches, and here is the other enclosure. The two brothers are settling in just perfectly. We hope they are much happier here than wherever they were being held at Silvicorp. They love wandering their enclosure and just generally hanging out in the shade or keeping their distance in the sun. On the other side, our pride of the lionesses is also making themselves right at home. This gorgeous vista of the South America Dome in the background does wonders for this enclosure. I always forget that lions are actually just, really big cats, and they have a lot of similar behaviors to my house cat, and I absolutely love watching them. This big green space back here will get filled in eventually, so leave me your predictions in the comments down below. Here is our youngest lioness getting ready for her close-up. This is the ultimate photo spot in this enclosure. If you're still here, remember to leave a like. Check out the link down below for your very own edZOOcation box featuring the lions. And if you'd like to support me a little bit further, you can always join the nest to see your name up here on our members board. See you next time. Bye.